Welcome to the My Money Circle podcast. I'm Rebecca Marf.
I'm Anthony Matthews.
Let's get into today's podcast. Welcome to today's episode of the My Money Circle podcast. Happy to be here, Anthony.
Very much so. It should be a bit of a lively episode today. There's plenty to talk about with going through different groups and how life changes for them.
Yeah, we've got an interesting topic to discuss today. And that is 3 generations across 3 different decades of life, and just how the rules of wealth building have changed significantly and seemingly mid-game for pretty much all of them now, due to a range of different things which we'll get into. But there's this sort of overwhelming feeling across all of these different groups. And when I say groups, we're going to talk about, the 20-something who's just starting out and is wanting to get ahead in the world and wondering what to do with their life. Talk about someone in their mid-40s, the mortgage, marriage, kids scenario and how the game's shifting a little bit for that age group. And then, people in their 60s who are preparing for the later part of their life, and how things just seem to have changed. What they were preparing for in the case of the older generations in terms of how they'd live their life and manage their finances doesn't seem to be gelling as well as what they thought. Same for the 40s. And in the case of, people who are just starting their working life and their financial life in some ways, they had the playbook or the rule book that they're being given by their parents in terms of how to get ahead and how to build wealth. It's also a little bit broken. So it's a real challenge. And I think a lot of people are really frustrated with their financial life and their financial circumstances. And when you look at all the information and the media and education that's put out by institutions and advice groups, and that's, all the way through social media, there are, rule books, if you like, for, starting investing and getting into the property ladder and managing your super or optimizing your super. But it just isn't enough. Like, it doesn't feel like it's enough. Like, it's not, 1 + 1 is not equaling 2, right, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And it's leading to a lot of confusion and frustration. And there's just a lot to unpack across all of the episode, these demographics. So I guess this episode is really just to kind of look at what are the challenges that each of those demographics face. And we can talk to all of them. You can talk to 3 of them from personal experience.
The first one.
And I can talk to 2 of them, and I have a perspective on the last. But, who knows what life will be like in another 20, 30 years. So let's get into it. Let's start with the mid-20s. So let's imagine this person is 25, just entering the workforce, been studying, maybe they've gone to uni or they've been doing some sort of education. They're just getting themselves ready to launch, basically, into the world. What's going on for them?
Well, if I cast my mind back, I think they're...
To the good old days.
The macro is... I can't believe the kind of world we're handing to people in their 20s, to be honest with you. I do think, and you don't want to sound like a boomer, even though I think the boomer perspective is...
I do want to hear your perspective.
Reasonably, well, I'm not boomer, almost, but life wasn't easy back then either. No. It wasn't like houses were like, $1,000 and you were being paid $500 a year.
Yeah.
But the complexity now that I think people in that cohort are dealing with is very hard. And if I think back to the situation when I was that age, I was just getting used to using spreadsheets. Email was new. relatively
Didn't they
new.
have carrier pigeons?
And I did one of the first financial models in banking. And yeah, so, and I'm not that particularly old. And all I'm bringing it up for is I then lived through a Russian default, an Asian crisis. Then we had the dot-com crash. Then we had 9/11. Then we had Enron. All of these things just washed through. And even now for some of the people that I managed recently, even the GFC is kind of a historical event. There's no first-hand knowledge of that. So I'm only bringing this up because, number one, I can't believe the change that has happened in the last 30 years. It's been unbelievable. There was no real internet back then. So change is going to be huge in the next 30 years. So get ready for that. The second thing is take a deep breath because I think the other thing that comes from all of that change is every time there was change, everyone had a complete panic attack. So when Russia defaulted and then we had an Asian crisis, it's the end of emerging markets going to implode. It's going to bring the whole of Western civilization, all our markets down. No. Then .com came along and the internet, there started to be websites. There's going to be no more shops. There's going to be no more Walmart. There's going to be no more Coles and Woolies. Everyone will just sit and buy stuff on their computer. Calm down. That didn't happen.
Yeah.
And then I remember even Microsoft Office coming in and we had legions of people that were doing manual calculations. So if you wanted to borrow money, if you were a company, the bank would have people doing it manually back in the 90s. And I remember talking to a couple of these folks in our analytic and modeling team, and they're like, if everybody gets spreadsheets, we're all out of a job. And then there were a lot of folks, particularly females, that were executive assistants or typing up. So all the analysis and documents we did back then, which people get Claude to do now, people were physically typing them.
They were typists.
Yes.
That was a job.
Armies of women. And then Word came along and they're like, we'd like our lawyers or our bankers to type up their own documents. And there was a bit of resistance to that. And then suddenly they're like, I type up the document, it's done. I don't have to wait for the week turnaround to get it all typed up. All of these people are going to get fired. What are we going to do with all of the typists? So to me, it harkens back to what's happening with AI at the moment. I personally don't believe there's going to be a job apocalypse out of this. All it's going to do, like all the other waves that have come through, is just change how work's done. There's not going to be 20% unemployment. So my advice is each time a wave comes through, get on it. Grab your surfboard and ride it in. Learn what AI is. And it's not just being a prompt engineer at the moment and having great prompts. What it's going to bring out in Australia, for example, for this cohort would be critical thinking. Critical thinking is going to be the number one skill people look for in hiring in the next 2 to 5 years. And without going off on too much of a tangent, because I know we're a financial coaching podcast, but that's what I worry a little bit in the education system at the moment. If we don't teach the kids that are about to go to uni and then go out into the workforce about critical thinking, if they're just writing an assignment on the Habsburg Empire and putting it through Claude and getting 10 out of 10, we're going to have a problem in that 10 to 15 year time frame. We do need to keep this critical thinking going. So all I think is in starting to get ready about thinking about your finances, you've got to think about your career. You're just starting out. Ride the wave, get on board, learn it, but don't panic. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, I think AI is it is a big scary thing.
Yeah.
I think it gets a little scarier once you start to also appreciate what it can do and then start to see how it is utilized. And how you can utilize it, and then how business might utilize it, and then how employers might utilize it, and then where does that end?
And no one knows at the moment.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there going to make money that humans have never created before, vast sums of money, by kind of simultaneously promising this amazing future, but also kind of implying via the back door that we can get rid of a lot of jobs, and it's this kind of difficult balance, and we don't quite know. I do think it's like everything that's come along, it's shiny and lovely now, and it will just fade away into being a tool, a very powerful tool, but it's going to be a tool. And sure, there's going to be some jobs that are not going to be around because of it anymore. But hell, people used to make ships out of wood and canvas sails, and we've still got I know unemployment went up a little bit just this morning, but we're still at 95% employment, despite all of the industrial revolution. When computers came out, everyone's like, oh, what are humans going to do in the year 2000 with all these computers? So, this is just a normal reaction function. But it doesn't say you shouldn't skill yourself up and get ready for, as we say, get ready for anything.
Yeah, I think the pace it's moving at, though, is also part of the disconcerting piece because,
that's a great point.
Using the
and the money and the capital being invested in it is nothing, is of orders of magnitude different to what we've seen before. Yeah.
A lot of the time when people talk about, like you made the point about, well, they're heralding this, great new world of work that's enabled by AI. But we have to get to that world, right? Where whether and what that looks like, whether that is it fading into the background as an enabler of human skill and labor, or whether it's, the more dire situation where it's front and center. Who knows? Maybe it's somewhere in the middle. But we have to get there. But it's the speed at which we're traveling and the relative adoption of AI across different industries as well that I think is disconcerting because people don't know, whether their industry will be one that's completely reshaped or partially reshaped or not reshaped at all. Like right now, people who work with their hands and do things that require a human in the loop, not even in the loop, but just there, are safer for now. Whereas people who are more involved in process work and task-orientated work feel more vulnerable. I guess coming back to the person in their 20s, like you've backed a horse, so to speak, if you've just come out of uni. Like you've gone to uni, you've done a degree, or you're getting into uni and doing a degree, you've got to choose to back a horse, right? Yep. And you've got a son who's university age. So how does that person think about work in a particular industry going forward? I mean, there's an argument to say that professional services is a little bit at risk of reshaping.
Yep.
So we mean, like financial services, law, all of those, again, that, there's a human element, but there's a lot of the work that can be automated.
Yeah.
So someone who's studying to become a lawyer might be feeling a little bit anxious right now. So what kind of advice are you giving your son about work, like as an example?
Well, it is difficult because he's in engineering, and there's a huge cohort of people in engineering that are all looking for different outcomes. A lot of them see engineering as just a great way to get into almost like a ticket to go into banking or into consulting, or weirdly, not many want to be an engineer. It's just that if you can get that degree, it's almost like a great access all areas VIP pass now.
It gives you optionality because it's broad.
The thing, I guess, that's a challenge for Australia is the economic complexity of Australia's economy, I think, is about 140 out of the 180 countries in the world at the moment and declining. But that's not to say that the economy isn't in great shape, and we only have 27 million people sitting on a very rich continent. So maybe a not very complex environment is a rational outcome. So we have a huge amount of natural resources, and there's huge demand for that. And that's a good cycle, and then we recycle that money back through the banks into various investments, mainly housing, as it turns out. And now we're obviously having that debate about whether that's a good idea and how we tweak that. Or maybe not tweak it, but, make a big adjustment to it. So, for example, they're thinking, well, maybe I'm going to go offshore. So my son and a couple of his friends are talking about when they get out, maybe going to America. They're worried about manufacturing and the ability for them to kind of use their skills to a maximum extent in Australia in 5 years is a concern. They're hoping everything, is there jobs-wise for them, and no one's assuming there's going to be a job apocalypse or something here.
Yeah.
But if we keep choosing to it's not disincentivizing, it's just not creating an environment where there's
incentivizing.
that we have innovation here. Do we want to set up a whole wave of drone companies? Do we want to set up a whole wave of companies that are in, to me, I think like aged care and health would be massive in Australia. Data centers could be massive in Australia. Australia's got loads of sunlight. We can access plenty of water in the right way. So there's no shortage of opportunities. It's a shortage of incentives versus the ability for Australians to take risks. And again, we need to have a debate about that. So that's what, and it's a big issue for them.
Yeah.
And I guess going on to what we want to talk about, this is where we come onto the issues of, well, how do I live here? If I get a job and stay, both my kids are like, how do we buy a house when they're $1 million?
Well, yeah, we'll get on to property. So I think with AI, I think for young people, it's probably sounds like it's important to form a view on what you think the direction of AI is heading with the industry that you're thinking about entering. It doesn't mean that it's going to be right, your view.
Yeah.
But coming back to critical thinking being key as well, and whatever you do and whatever occupation you're thinking about moving into, being able to form a view off of your own research and critical thinking and in consultation with people who've lived through different periods like yourself.
Okay,
right?
That's exactly the point, because
it's a collaborative thing.
I think the second thing I'd be advocating for people in looking at their jobs at the moment, it's collaborating and it's going to be human. You need to
build your network.
Build a network.
Yeah.
Like in your 20s, all you should be doing is saying yes to everything. Go out, build networks.
Yeah.
This is the time of your life the thing that will be a huge determinant in your professional success will be who you know at age 30.
That's what they've always said. Not what you know, who you know.
Exactly. But it's not just, palling around or networking. It's adding value and learning how you can add value.
Yes.
That's why you're networking. You're not networking to get, I could bring somebody a box of business cards. Does that help them have a successful career? No, it's how can I help that person and how can they help me? It's very transactional. So I would argue, and this is probably why, and again, don't want to sound boomerish, but I'm a huge fan of being in the office. You learn so much just making a cup of tea next to somebody going, what's your job? And what skills do you need for that? If you're in a big company, there is an ocean to swim in of knowledge that you can acquire. And there may be somebody doing a job you've never even heard of before. So that being in the office is how you learn that. If you can see it, you can be it, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is there's a subliminal learning that goes on when you're around other people. Just listening to how other people run a meeting or how you should behave in a meeting.
Or not behave.
And if your boss says something crazy, what do you think having a successful career would mean? A, calling your boss out in front of everybody and going, I'm the smartest guy in the room? Or would it be B, going, I think that's a great idea, and being a yes person?
Sounds
now,
like
these are the decisions you're going to have to start making and navigating. So how do you do that? You can't do it by yourself. You have to tap experience and knowledge from other people. So get out there and chat, turn up to the office, wear a nice suit, dress well, show everybody a bit of respect. And the final thing would be, one of my funny old bosses, have a sense of urgency. Like there's this, and he was a wonderful, wonderful chap. And he would always talk about this little metric, and I see it around sometimes, which is 1 to the power of 365. So what you do every day, if you get something done, is 1. But 1.01 to the power of 365 is 36. And he would always go, just do that little incremental thing every day. You're going to get 360, you're going to get 36 times the work done.
Yep.
So that would be my other tip. Just be the person that's a bit proactive. Look for relationships. Human relationships are the most powerful thing on the planet. And thirdly, look to get wisdom and experience from people around you. And that's how you kind of work out. That will become a very valuable package, because then that drives critical thinking and insight.
Yeah. So,
and I'm not saying, I'm not a bit going, you and I have all different opinions about different things. That's just my perspective. But that's what I found personally to work.
Well, and you've got a son of that age, and that's the advice that you're sharing with him. So I think you've been there yourself. You've now got an adult child who's in that exact demographic. And so summing it up, I mean, we've just basically highlighted all the things, the advantages, and what to focus on are the things that are intrinsically human. So we're talking about
there'll be another podcast out there going, don't worry about turning up the office, just be awesome.
Yeah,
with AI,
absolutely.
So.
That a tech podcast that'd be like, you must know what is happening. You must know how to contribute to the tech part of your industry.
And go and listen to those podcasts as part of your learning experience.
Correct. And build and form a view.
Right.
You must form a view.
Yep.
And then that's going to give you the inside run on, along with your gut and along with your critical thinking, and along with the relationships and what you're hearing by conversing with other humans and peers in your industry.
Yep.
What exactly, is the best way to position yourself moving forward from a work point of view.
Yeah.
But then property is still a big problem area. Like the maths on property is difficult for people. Well, for a lot of people, it doesn't matter just about being in your 20s, but it is difficult for someone, in their 20s looking at, well, okay, great, I've got a plan for attack of how I'm going to, figure out my work life for the next 5 years. But, should I be thinking even bothering with property? Like, I mean, is that realistic? Mum and dad bought a house, paid it off. It grew exponentially in value. And that seems like a really great patient and passive way of growing my wealth over the next 30 years. And it was. Yeah. Right. Now it has been, I don't think it's ever been easy for people to get into property. No. You made the comment earlier about it was still difficult when you were looking at buying houses.
I bought my house in Brisbane.
Yeah.
And the mortgage was 18%.
Yeah, right. So, right.
Now, even before that, so what year was that? So my parents, when they bought their first house, just to give you some context, they had a 60% deposit to loan or deposit to valuation of the house. Yeah. So we're used to hearing loan to valuation of 60.
Yeah.
They had a 60% deposit on the house, and they got turned down for a loan.
Yes.
This was in the 70s.
Right. And so it was hard to borrow money, and my dad always talks about this, and he was single, building houses, and this is in New Zealand in the 70s, and he couldn't get money to buy land and build property because, he'd go for an interview with the bank manager, and the bank manager would say, well, what do you want to borrow money for? You're not married. What do you want a house for? Like
the most powerful person in the whole district was the bank manager. When I was a kid, like everybody, if the bank manager was walking around the local supermarket, everybody stopped. And it was like
quasi-man.
Yeah, it would be like Trump walking past or something. Everyone's like, well, I better be respectful because I might. I don't want to offend this person. How that's changed.
Right. So it was difficult to borrow money, but the values were lower.
Yes.
Incomes were also lower. Right. Pay was lower. But proportionately, and we're not going to break out a graph on did boomers have it harder than, your average person trying to buy property right now.
If we could have a podcast with a whiteboard, we could totally dominate this particular
But it's always been tricky. You had difficulty.
Yep.
It took me and my husband, it took us 13 years to buy our first home.
Yeah.
So we had no help from mum and dad. And we were we were trying to save in a rising Sydney market for over a decade.
Yeah.
And the last part of our 13-year journey, we had 2 kids. So
Yeah, well,
we're on
wow.
one income to
Well,
close
we
that
can
last
talk about
5
the
year
whole
stretch.
buying a house and kid journey. You'll be a black belt at that, having.
So it was a challenge. I mean, that's why it took us that long. We
Yeah.
had and it was very intentional, the approach to it. But I do remember when I moved out of home when I was in my early 20s, and my mum put the house on the market a couple of years after I left home. I moved up to Queensland actually, and I remember the house sold, and at that time it was like, you know, in the early ones or something, and then I saw it transact. I don't know, it must have been 5 or 6 years later, and it was another couple of million north of that. So, and I just remember thinking, I was still in Sydney and, you know, starting my life in my 20s, working, earning what I was earning, saving what I was saving, which was good compared to probably what a lot of people were saving or not saving.
But the prices were getting.
But the prices, yeah, I did the math.
Going up so much. Your deposit was just nowhere near keeping up.
You couldn't catch up.
Yep.
Even with like an 80% savings rate.
Once the numerator gets so big, the little denominator of your deposit just gets smaller and smaller because that number's so big.
That's right.
Even with small percentage gains. Yeah.
So, and then when you go down to one income, you handicap yourself.
Yeah. I'm surprised you're sitting here, Rebecca.
So we
can do an episode on resilience, clearly.
So we ended up moving to Queensland, and that wasn't the entire reason. We had job and career opportunities, but it was part of the decision because we could afford to buy a family home.
And boy, hasn't that closed up now too.
And then that's also closed up. Yeah. So I guess, you know, I found it difficult, and I do remember, we're talking about people in their 20s. I do remember being in my 20s as someone who's very dialed into my finances and thinking to myself, as someone who was very dialed into my finances, how am I going to make the math on this for myself?
Yep.
Without help, without a leg up. And I guess the reality is that you keep going.
Yep.
What else are you going to do? Sit down and give up, and you look at other ways to make to build wealth in the short term,
people
short
in America
to medium
and
term.
the UK have given up.
Yeah,
there are huge statistics that people under 40 have basically given up on ever owning property over there.
And there have been. I mean, I don't know whether that's where we're headed here or not. I kind of hope not. The downside is that, you know, if that is the case, you think, well, there's a lot of people who are lifelong renters or long-term renters.
Right.
The idea being, though, if that is the case, that you must have some other wealth-building vehicle then, because typically people, their principal place of residence has been that wealth builder for them.
I know.
In the journey of life. So
the
problem, though, for young people is that rents are sky high and supply is low. And so it's a real challenge for them to actually get into a rental at an affordable level.
Well, and then I guess the counterpoint to that is there are some cultural issues or stereotypes or operating assumptions that probably need to be challenged, which is the house on the quarter of an acre block. You know, that's probably gone by the wayside. But there just seems to be a little bit of an aversion for buying an apartment in Australia traditionally. People do want to get a house. And I understand that, because then once you get a house and you build equity, then you can get an investment property. And then off we go. We're on the escalator, and our tax system's been set up to do that.
Historically.
Yeah. So every other city in the world just fills their centre of the city with towers. And where there's no towers, house prices are very high. And I guess Sydney's going to be a great experiment where they're now going to start putting some towers in. I'm always amazed when I fly into Sydney. There's a big bunch of buildings in the centre for work, and then houses. You fly into any other major city. London's probably the other exception, though. But any other major city, most of the buildings in a certain section are apartment towers. So we probably finally got our mind around people like, oh, I don't want to buy a 2-bedroom apartment. I want to save up and get a little house somewhere. So we just needed to densify our cities. But then I think, you know, and we can get onto it later, but, you know, the people see on social media this lifestyle, and it's all about, and I guess there's TV shows that kind of promote it. And it's like people don't want to be seen in an old orange brick house, in a reasonably peripheral suburb anymore. It needs to be, white and fabulous. And, I'm 30. Why am I living in that house? So we've done that as well. We've brought social media pressure on people to achieve the vision that is being dangled in front of them. So it's really tough.
Yeah, I think the younger generation, like people in their 20s now, there's obviously still people that covet that kind of lifestyle, but a lot of them have stepped away from it.
As a reaction.
Yeah, someone was telling me the other day that things like nightclubs aren't even a thing anymore for people in their 20s. Dancing, going out, that kind of stuff. It's all...
Well, the stocks of all these huge alcohol companies around the world, like Diageo, have decreased massively. And even France, apparently, they're ripping up vines now.
Yeah.
Alcohol consumption's plunging around the world. And again, this comes back to a point, like a Scott Galloway type point, which is we're already not even replacing ourselves globally, particularly in Australia. Once you get under 2 replacement rate, your population's declining.
Yeah.
I mean, China's barely above 1 now. They're like their generation's going to halve. So if humans aren't going and dancing and drinking with each other anymore, that's not really going to pick up the birth rate. And why is the birth rate low? Well, I think, again, I knew somebody here and I'm like, why are you guys not going out? And they're like, well, I can't afford $12, $13 for a beer.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, if you behave like, and, if it's not your finest hour, if it's 11 o'clock at night and we've had a little bit of a personal best drinking, apparently there's a really big problem with people not wanting to be on video where their friends take a video of them doing something stupid and, it goes on the internet. So they're like, I just don't want to go to parties, or I don't want to dance, or I don't.
Yeah.
Oh, it must be very, very hard to navigate all that.
So I think, property, should they or shouldn't they? I guess it really just depends about what's on the table for you.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, aside from whether you think it's going to continue to go up or not, or whatever the view is, if you don't have, the reality might be if you don't have a parent or somebody wanting to go guarantor or use their equity or, come in with the extra 10% or whatever is required to do that, and you're not willing to look at a property that fits into one of the government assistance schemes, given it's, where that's likely to be located and what the valuation caps are and things, then we don't really have a decision to make. You have to look at other options in the interim. But that's not necessarily a bad thing either, right? The property markets, if there's nothing worse than going into a 30-year commitment if it's going to be something that blows you off course worse than had you just not gone into it or delayed getting into it at a later stage.
And it's the rules of the game, right? And we've just seen the rules of the game change. There's positives and challenges with that. But, I remember my parents dealing with endless problems due to inflation and credit crunches back in the 70s and 80s. And my father got laid off multiple times from companies. It sounded like the recessions that they had back then were brutal.
Yeah.
But inflation was a huge problem. If it was 8 or 10% a year, like that had a material impact on your life. And I can understand why central banks really want to keep that under control. It's a shame we've only got to jack interest rates up as our only tool to do that, because people with big mortgages are going to suffer now. But then, then we had the capital gains discount, and then we had superannuation come in, and then we had the whole dividend imputation. So the rules change, and we all get a bit annoyed how super rules get changed, but they change, and pension laws change around the world.
Yeah.
So there are winners and losers, but we played the game as it was back then. And I don't think anyone expected Australian house prices to become the highest per capita in the world. And, we're also going to have to navigate an inheritance wave. The US is also grappling with that. Like, there's going to be a huge transfer of assets in the next 20 years. So that is something, if you're in your 20s now, your parents are probably a bit younger, obviously, but that will be something you have to factor in.
I would say for people in their 20s, it's I don't know what you think about this, but it's if property, some people just love and want to own their own home.
Yeah. That's the goal.
There's a goal. It's just a goal. It's a security thing. It might be the way that they want to live their life.
Yep.
And so if that is the case, then and this goes along with all other things, it's worth considering where, and I mean geographically, where you want to set your life up.
Yeah.
I think if you're in your early 20s, it might be too early to make that call. I don't know. It depends on what else is going on in your life.
No, I think your 20s are you should be getting out and exploring the world and your career, trying all sorts of new things. But by the time you're 30, like I guess we would both advocate, because we're financial people, to start saving as soon as you can.
Yeah.
Just tip as much as you can into super. It's if you can't get wealthy by, some very quick get rich scheme, get wealthy slowly. Just put a little bit away every month, and then after 30 or 40 years, you'd be shocked how much is
there's only so many vehicles. And when I say vehicles, I don't mean cars. I mean investment vehicles. I mean ways to keep it really simple to grow your wealth.
Yep.
Like there just is. I mean, if we're talking about traditional ways, we've got saving money. We put in the bank. We can put it into the share market. There's different ways to do that, but share market, let's call it that as a bucket. We've got property.
Yep.
But we've just talked about the difficulties of that. It's got its own challenges, and maybe that's out of reach.
Yep.
Then in this country, we've got superannuation. That's another way, a vehicle, or a way of getting ahead, putting some money away. And then we've got everything else.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're the four key ones.
Yeah.
And then we've got everything else. And so I don't know what your advice to someone in their 20s, just thinking about property and feeling like their wealth building, avenues are being folded on top of them. But we've got other ways.
Yep.
And starting and then putting little bits into those other ways is the way to go.
Yep.
As a starting point. It can be the way to go, I should say. And then I would personally be looking at the everything else category and working out what might be achievable there. I mean, lots of young people go in to create businesses and side hustles, and do really well out of those. And in some ways, AI has made doing that in parallel with more traditional ways to invest and work easier alongside what you're doing. So I think you've just got to play with what's handed to you at the time.
I think you forgot one investment.
What's that?
The most important investment, picking the right partner.
Oh, right. Yes. That is a good investment.
If you get that wrong.
Yeah. Everything gets derailed anyway.
I can assure you from personal experience, very costly.
Yeah.
But if you get it right, it's the most positive thing in your life, but it's also a great way to build wealth, because you're a team.
Yeah.
And now we've got two incomes.
2 brains, 2 incomes.
2 brains, 2 incomes. We've got a little bit of risk management, because if I lose my job, my partner's still there.
Yeah.
So, I think your number one predictor of how well and it depends what outcomes are important to you, obviously.
Yeah.
But is who you marry or who you partner with is going to be the number one predictor of how you get through that arc.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I would be borrowing as much money as I possibly could in my 20s, and I would be tapping everybody I could to get a bit of equity, and buying as many assets as I can, because what you want to do when you get into your 50s or wherever, and I know there's a lot of information out there about this, but you want to be buying assets that produce income, because what you're doing in your 20s when you're working is you're renting your time to somebody. Your company is renting your time and your brain. Now, the company gets all the upside of that. You don't. You get a fixed outcome. That's your wage every month. I'm paying you to come up with great ideas and help my business. So if you take a step back, you're like, well, if I'm adding that much alpha, if I'm adding that much value, how do I capture that? And that's what you're saying. You can go and start a business. I still think in Australia, the way to capture that, if you've got unique skills or you've got the passion, owning your own business or doing your own thing is the way to accumulate wealth quickly, because all of that extra value accumulates to you. So I'd be borrowing lots of money to buy assets so that when you turn 50, you can transition, maybe sell a couple of them, and then you're on the income, because the rules change. Obviously, and super's a great thing, but there are people just kind of in that little bridge at the moment that super didn't come in early enough for them, where they have tons of assets and no income. So they might have $9 million on paper, but they can't afford a pizza. So you don't want to be in that. You don't want to be in that liquidity trap. And we could, again, it'll be tangent treehouse, but this is where some of these wealth taxes become very tricky, because people go, oh, Rebecca's a billionaire. Why don't we tax her 5% every year? Well, you might be a billionaire on paper, but again, you've got $14 in the bank.
Jeez.
You know what I mean? Like
Yes,
it's
no,
a huge difference between what you're worth in assets and how much money you have. They're not the same thing. And, you know, you'd go around Europe or you'd be in England and you'd see these beautiful big houses, and then you'd be looking at the house and they're like, then you realize they've got to run weddings and they've got to run functions or whatever at that house, because the house might be worth £30 million, but it costs £1 million to run a year.
Yeah.
And the people that own it don't make £1 million a year.
Yeah.
They've got a great asset. But yeah, I actually had this chat with my son about how you, not get around, I shouldn't say get around, but how do very wealthy people deal with this asset liquidity problem? And I told him if I was in government, one of the things you'd have to look at is, and we used to do this back at the bank, but if you've got $1 billion or $100 million or $50 million, if you've got these kinds of assets, what you do is, to avoid or to manage a capital gain, you don't sell it. And why is that? It's not like that there's any malfeasance here or any getting around anything. These things are illiquid. A lot of the time there's no market to sell these things into, but you can borrow against it. So what happens is you've got X amount of assets and you just go and get a line of credit against that, and that's how you kind of release liquidity out of these big assets. And why is that? Well, it's also there's no capital gains on that.
Yeah.
So that's something I think in America in particular, people are saying, well, maybe we should, if you get a line of credit against all these assets, maybe we should put a tax on that. And I think that would probably be quite a fair thing. But coming and taxing illiquid assets, property tax here is kind of like doing that, but it's difficult. So that would be the 3 steps I would.
But the key thing there is that's something that's a lever or a flex that you can explore when you've got an asset base.
Yep.
So the first step is building the asset base.
Before you cook your turkey, catch your turkey.
So that's right. So you've got, in this person in their 20s, we've talked about it like from a career lens, from an investment lens. Just look at what's available to you.
Yep.
What help is available to you? Aligned with what are your goals? Think really hard about what your goals are, and because that will help you work out whether you want to make the commitment to purchase a property and using what resources and what that means, and just also lean into the human side of everything. Really, that's going to help you build your network. It's coming back to helping you find that partner, which is one of the key investments in life that you'll make, and then give yourself some optionality. So building capital is great as well, but if you can build capital that has the ability to provide you with an income, then you're not just trapped in illiquid assets like you were saying before. And it's really hard, some people go into business, but business might not be cash flow producing for a long time either.
Right.
So, and it is you deposit time initially to get said income out of it. It's not passive. So having a balance, if you can, that's sort of like nirvana.
And a lot of people go, renting my time out to a company, that sounds like a great deal versus going and working 7 days a week on something that the statistics tell me will fail.
Yeah. So give yourself some optionality.
Yep.
Whether it's the career, what you're doing from a wealth building point of view, and then just like, don't lose hope. Like, everything is cyclical. There have been periods where we've had massive shifts in the workforce, from a macroeconomic perspective, from a geopolitical perspective. So these things come and go, coming back to the seasons. Just, if it feels like winter, okay, that's fine. But just know that every season ends and a new one starts.
Don't panic and take all your money out of the market. Or not when I say all your money. Don't go to cash and sit there, because if inflation roars back, which I think it will, you're losing 5% every year. So stay in the market. And in fact, if there's some kind of Armageddon, if you're in your 20s, run towards the Armageddon, run towards the burning building and go, oh my God, BHP's off this much or Westpac's off. And don't go and just put it in. Like, just lift your investment in bad times.
Now, we should probably say this is all general advice today.
General advice,
not
personal advice.
We do not know anyone who's listening or their personal circumstances or financial circumstances. So this is a general conversation about someone in this particular demographic.
That investing is a dynamic process. Like superannuation, you can be a bit more passive because, again, everyone's busy. But I don't panic. Get advice. But I've just seen when you're in your 20s, rather than looking at a crisis as like necessarily a bad thing, I'm just saying it could be a buying opportunity. And who knows what happens with Aussie property too. But is it a buying opportunity? So that's all I'm saying. Very general advice. I'm definitely not telling you to go buy BHP or Westpac. So
the second door in the room, in these 3 rooms that we're looking into this afternoon, is the person in their 40s or the couple in their 40s. This is another demographic where, there's mortgage, there's kids, there's careers, there's other fixed commitments. And these have been, we've been told up to this point that the 40s is where your career takes off. It's your highest earning years.
Yeah.
You've got everything under control. Like, you're into the property market. Your kids are maybe little but coming out of being little. Things are supposed to feel like maybe you're hitting your strides a little bit. And I don't know that that's the reality that a lot of people in their 40s feel like at the moment. So why? Well, again,
this will be your forte. You'll have hours of material.
Everywhere. Yeah, I think it's we've had to buy into a rising market, most likely.
Yeah.
We've taken on slightly more debt than potentially generations before, but that's because the average price of property went up to over $1 million in most capital cities, or near to it, depending on which one we talk about. Interest rates they took a nosedive during COVID, but we've been through a couple of rate hikes since then, and the forecast is looking like that's going to continue not potentially come down anytime soon. We've got the reshaping of industries with AI again, which sort of came out of nowhere really for a lot of people, and a lot of people still haven't even got their teeth into it or figured out how to use it or what it might do to their job or industry, or they don't want to think about it. Yep. Fair enough.
Well, it's causing a bit of inflation itself. All the investment going into it is crowding out some markets.
Yeah. So
but if AI really lives up to even part of the hype, it will be deflationary. It should take prices down, but it's such an unknown at the moment.
Yeah. We've had cost of living pressures, wages growth. Although wages are higher compared to 30 years ago, wages growth has been slow compared to the growth in our respective cost bases across the key areas of our cost of living.
Well, and it's below inflation at the moment.
Yeah.
So your buying power with every pay is less.
Buying power is shrinking. And depending on the household makeup as well, I think there's been a big shift of people who have maybe left having kids later in life. And so that's moved the period where you've got a household on one income into this decade versus the last decade. And I think also there's been a big over the last decade, the rise in entrepreneurship. So I think a lot of couples now have one partner where they are working in unsecure employment. You know, they're working a side hustle. They started a consulting business. They've started a business or a startup. What silly person would do that? And that creates an added level of income and pressure, you know. So it's a melting pot, this particular demographic.
You get income, but there's practical problems, like a bank won't lend to you.
Correct. If you've got
even if your side
income,
business is making $500,000 a year, and your shareholding arrangements aren't right, or it's kind of lumpy, the bank will be like,
And I also think COVID as that period, you know, 2 or 3 years, it was very disruptive on a number of different levels, but it was very disruptive to a lot of people in that, you know, they lost their jobs and their income, and therefore their career trajectory took a hit.
Yes. I know many people like that.
Which is quite destabilizing from an income point of view, from a wealth building point of view, and from a debt, you know, paying down your debt. And also if whatever the plans were from a financial point of view, then those took a hit in term, you know, from a time frame point of view. What you were working towards over 5 years or 6 years didn't come off, and now it's looking more like 10 or 11 years. So there's a lot going on for people in their 40s. But and then what's sort of what I've noticed, you know, through social media and through peers and those in my orbit is, you know, some people, there's a lot of reassessment, if you like, of what is really important and what they want to do, and do they want to...
You're both changing as people too.
You're both changing as people, and is this the career for me? Is this the trajectory I want to be on? And there's a real pocket of the internet or social media that talks about this drastic reinvention. You know, a lot of people like leaving Australia, selling up their homes, you know, going to live in Thailand or the Philippines or Bali you know, and just there's a bit of a rejection of what was previously agreed to or on track for. And I think a lot of people sort of find themselves thinking, well, maybe I should do that, maybe I shouldn't do that. I don't know. Is this the better way? Like if I've got a $3 million house in Sydney, like why wouldn't I just sell that, pay off the $500,000, $600,000 mortgage, live for whatever a month in some third world country, and
nice island
just invest the $2 million. Maybe that works as a life financial plan going forward. The problem though is that that's fine where you've got no dependents, or you've I mean, people do it with dependents, but there's trade-offs that people have to make, right? You've done a 10, 15, 20 year arc with your career. You know, you've got a mortgage, you've got kids in school, you've got social networks, you've got friends and family. You've still got income potential here. It's just that our cost of living's making people reassess their life choices and decisions. So I think a lot of people think they would have been further along with the mortgage. They maybe would have been earning more. They would have had more ability to enjoy their income without feeling like they're constantly on a budget. But, you know, going back to the person in their 20s, it's just that the things have shifted, and people's, you know, our perspective needs to shift with that, and a reassessment or recalibration of what we're actually doing and where we're going and what tools we're going to use to get there is what's needed. So, I mean, I think that's something that people need to think long and hard about.
It's such a huge transition as well, because I'm just thinking back to when we had our kids, and we were kind of later in life, so right in that 40s zip code. The biggest shock to me was childcare and then school fees starting, because we just went from like having a pretty nice life to being like, oh my goodness, these are going to be quite expensive. Coming back to our birth rate discussion earlier, now I see why fertility rates plunge when you got to pay for your children. It was quite a shock. And again, coming back to our other theme of how things seem to be getting more complex. Now that my son's at uni, there are still expenses. Like the old thing used to be, we'd have a big party because your kid's out of senior and that's it. They're off. They get HECS or whatever, but the expenses keep coming. And they get a lot of their peers are children of relatively affluent families, so they all the kids are definitely looking at each other, and there's kind of comparisons going on. And I think again, there's this pressure we're kind of putting on people directly and indirectly to appear to be living the dream as well, and lots of international holidays and so on. But I think underneath it all, there's financial stress, and I think many kids in affluent households end up with financial anxiety. Great childhood or whatever, but then they're like, how am I going to replicate this? What kind of job do I need to get to kind of achieve this? So yeah, it's kind of like that transition from having your own kids to then trying to give advice to your own kids. And I don't know what your parents were like, but I certainly didn't listen to mine very carefully. Listen to my grandmother, so we've all got that problem. But one of the little, I don't know if it's a tip or a trick, I sat down with my wife, and when the kids came along and we were trying to work out, well, here's all the childhood expenses, here's how much you earn at your job, here's how much I earn. And we just divvied it up and just said, look, your income pays for the kids, and we can kind of top it up. My income will go to debt reduction and buying, things we need. So to me, rather than putting it all, and everyone can do it differently, rather than putting it into a pot and trying to, and then she felt she had agency over making the decisions in there. Like if there was money over, she could buy clothes out of that as well. So that's kind of how we did it. And we were even, and I know a lot of my younger colleagues before, they were all like, oh, well, how do we save lots of money for a house, but then balance that with having kids?
Yeah.
Like it's a really big gap. So we're trying to save or buy things. And then, back in the day, people kind of probably like yourself had kids at the same time and go, well, if we've got this much pressure, 4 times more pressure from these 7 new things, well, how bad could it be? So I just think if I look back, life goes so quickly, and we asked our friend, like I was getting overwhelmed. I was working, in a trading room during the GFC, and I would get home a husk of a man, but would then have to, hey, how was your day? Like I can't come home and go, I'm really tired, and I don't want to hear about the kids. I just want to.
Yeah.
You've got to be an active participant in the relationship, otherwise there'll be no relationship.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think just jump in and do it. I think while you're young, have the kids, have the kids, and just get on with it. Because one of my colleagues back in the day, I said, how are you dealing with this? I couldn't believe you don't get any sleep for 2 years. Like I could do anything in life, but it was always premised on having a sleep. And when you have kids, you've got your wife, and we had 2 kids. Someone's not sleeping.
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah, and someone's got to take the hit, right?
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, when I was kind of talking to a colleague about it, he said, the days are long, but the years are short. And that's so true. So I'd probably advocate taking a lot of pain up front in as short a period as possible, instead of going, I'm going to get this much money saved, then I'm going to buy a house, we'll pay down X% of that, then we'll have kids, and then I don't think that's the right way. As soon as you can, have the kids up front, because I tell you don't want to be paying for school fees when you're 57 and still have a mortgage at 62.
Yeah.
Like I would just be all in and let go. Do you know what? If I've met the woman of my dreams, I'm a man of my dreams, or I've partnered up with the person of my dreams, let's just go. Let's just, if we want a house, let's work out a plan, but try and have the kids and everything. And then maybe at 40, 45, we sit down and maybe we start a business, or we sell up and get a B&B.
Yeah.
But don't wait, because life goes so much more quickly than you think, and there's health issues, parent issues that'll come at you.
Yeah.
You don't have the luxury of time.
And I think it gets harder and harder to make that adjustment the longer you leave it as well. So, and yeah, that is the age-old question, like when people are in their 40s and they're building wealth and, coming up to their 40s, we're talking about either side of it, not just 30s and 40s. You can't kind of imagine that. How are we going to do this?
Oh, I know.
Like, you kind of think, you look at other people.
You don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know.
That's the thing in life. Yep.
You look at other people and you think, how are they making it work?
Yeah.
Like, how are they living here in this city, in this town, in this neighborhood, in this whatever?
What did I do wrong?
Yeah.
How did I not have that?
How do they have, someone who's pushing a pram at 10 a.m. and therefore not at work?
Yeah.
Right? And this kid is not a newborn, they're 12 months or whatever. So just know that if that's you and you are thinking about that, it's something that just it just works out. People work it out. It doesn't just work out. You work it out. And having it happen earlier or whenever it's going to happen is the way to go, because it plans, and I'm one for it. Like I do plan most things in my life, and most of them have turned out a little differently, if not a lot differently from my plan. So, but that doesn't mean that the planning's not useful, but just know that at some point you got to bite the bullet and just get into it and get it underway. So I think the other thing is, when the game's changed or the rules are changing on you and you're not where you thought you'd be or everyone tells you should be in this midlife area, I think if you look back and give yourself a bit of grace, there's usually a couple of good reasons for it. Except that those were hopefully out of your control. If they were in your control, then, it is what it is and we are where we are. Yeah. I think holding on to that comparisonitis of yourself, where you told yourself you'd be versus where you are, it's not helpful. Yeah. And it's not allowing you to see the possibilities of the future either, and the new ways that you could explore continuing to look at building your wealth. And it might be completely different, or might look completely different to how you'd planned to do it.
Make yourself happy. Don't make other people happy.
Yeah.
It's
And then we're gonna move on to the last segment, which is people in their mid-60s. So we've got I think I'm just going to hand it to you to really.
Well, I'm not in my mid-60s.
I know you're not in your mid-60s, but people who are in their 50s and 60s, they're sitting. What are they thinking about? What's on their mind?
A whole range of things, and I've had many first-hand conversations with people, and ticking them off quickly. Knowledge.
Yeah.
You would think by then you're all over it, and no, there are people who have no idea how are capital gains treated inside a super fund.
Yeah.
How do you turn the super fund from accumulation to pension phase?
Yeah.
What happens then?
Yeah.
Do I get taxed on the money that comes out of it? I'm shocked. Like, experts often don't expert because they assume people have similar expertise because they're wealthy, for example, or they've been doing the work. So it's a lifelong journey to understand. The second thing is, I think there's a transition from a structured life to an unstructured life, and that is very scary.
Yeah.
There's a temptation to try and keep yourself busy, but at what cost, and what do I need income-wise to live? It's a very difficult balance. The third thing is, I know firsthand from a bunch of people about relevance deprivation syndrome, which is,
to explain,
used to be a very important person or a busy person, and people who I was the managing director of X at corporate Y. And then when you then contemplate retirement, what am I now? So I think there's a psychology mixed up with the financial element that you need to, that people do think through. Then it's the whole, where are your parents at? They're probably there's proper health issues.
Yep.
You're going to have to help your kids.
Yeah.
How do you balance all that up if you can? And then it's maybe a spouse health issue. So it's working out all of these kind of life issues don't go away. They're just different. And if you're in a fortunate position of having good income, great. As we were talking about earlier, that's the goal. Don't worry about having X million in assets or whatever you're aiming for. It's income when you retire. Like you could own an asset that's worth $10 million or go down to be worth $100,000. But if it provides good income for you, you don't necessarily need to worry about the value of that asset as long as the money keeps coming out. And as a very quick example of that, let's say you've got $2 million in your super fund at the moment, and it's paying 5% at the moment. So it sounds like a lot of money to be getting $100,000, but it depends on what your lifestyle is. But that's less than $10,000 a month. You don't get the pension because you got too much money, apparently, according to the government, but they want you to live on less than $10,000 a month. Now, if you've earned good money, that might be quite a big lifestyle adjustment. So you need to navigate that. And then the other thing is, how many people have $2 million in their super?
Yeah.
Not many.
Yeah.
So there are very practical things. And again, we come back to, I would say once you turn 50, get advice.
Yeah.
Or even if you've got expertise, you're going to miss things. You don't know what you don't know. And you've only got 10 years. And as we said before, the key way to build wealth is time. It's not how brainy you are, not your advisors. It's just time. So when you're 50, you've got enough time to start choosing when to retire from 60 onwards.
Yeah. And I think, so just to wrap the three together, like one of the things that's quite clear is that, or hopefully clear from this our conversation, is that it doesn't matter if you're in your 20s, your 40s, or your 50s or 60s, there's no clear right strategy or no clear right product or no clear right decision. It really is unique. And in the absence of a clear, definitive decision, what's really valuable for a lot of people is the process of deciding.
Right.
And that is what coaching's really designed to do, is to help people have the kind of conversation.
The general advice that we talk about.
That gives them a conversation that gives them clarity about what it is they're actually trying to decide.
Yes.
Are they trying to decide to do this or that?
Such a
or
good
the other
point.
thing?
They won't have the answers, but they help you get to your own answer.
And that's where I think a lot of people end up in advice maybe too soon for their situation.
Right.
Because when you go to get advice, you're really presenting with a set of circumstances that are going to be matched to a good recommendation, but it might not be what you're trying to decide to do straight away. So having the kind of conversation that you need in order to get clarity and build some confidence around all of the things that might be relevant for you, so that you've got a direction and a decision, or at least feel like you can advocate for yourself in making that decision when you're presented with what is invaluable advice by a financial advisor at the end of the day. So I think hopefully we've shed a little bit of light, and people have seen themselves in some of what we've spoken about today. And if you have, it'd be great for them to feel free to reach out, have a conversation with a coach.
Share this with a friend.
Share the episode with a friend,
and
hopefully it sparks conversations internally, for them in their own world, in their own life. And then that's usually the impetus that you need to sort of get on to getting some clarity and making a decision.
Yep. And it's fun. Can be. And why not put a little bit of effort in and release a lot of anxiety that you've probably got
Yeah.
Just having a plan. And you know what? The joy of just getting a mentor, getting advice, sharing ideas is so powerful. And you're not going to get that from just relying on AI or just trying to educate yourself. It's going to be a team effort.
Yeah.
And it's all about trust and relationships. So
absolutely.
That's the key. Start early.
You heard it here first. That's it. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good chat. If you enjoyed this episode as much as we did making it, definitely follow along. And I'd love to see some questions. As you can tell, there's no shortage of us giving very long-winded answers to whatever intrigue and drama that you have going on in your life. So drop it in the chat. We'll engage and we'll make everybody happier and wealthier.
My Money Circle is a corporate authorised representative of Novus Capital Limited. The information provided on this podcast is general in nature and does not constitute financial product advice. For personal financial product advice, please consult a licensed financial advisor.